right?
You.
Awesome.
Take away Allegra.
You know, organic gardening is a topic that's everywhere in the news these days. I don't know if you saw the article that was going around Facebook about the destruction that quinoa is currently causing the peasants of Colombia. This is true, look it up. And so not only when we talk about organic gardening do I have to think of myself as a person of the earth, I have to think of it as a person of a completely over-entitled country. You know, those white people problems and everything else. So I want to just give you a little talk about organic gardening and how that affects me. First slide, please. Well, obviously, you know, I mean, we hear in the news all the time about Monsanto and all the genetic, you know, farming and crops and all this stuff and how that's really bad. And I happened to come across these two lobsters one day in my kitchen, you know, before we got any cats that kill everything in sight. And they just reminded me so much of that greedy GOP mentality. And I thought, you know what, I can no longer participate in this system. I've got to have my own organic garden. Next slide, please. Well, I don't know if y'all have ever been to a Minnesota Twins game, but you can get nachos served in a baseball helmet, which is completely awesome. But if you think about it, those people are so headed on the road to gastric bypass. So while this may actually be kind of what a Minnesota Twins season looks like, you know, you start out really crappy, but as the season goes on, you start thinking about, okay, the Twins can do it, I can eat more nachos. I don't have that problem because baseball kind of sucks. So whenever the Twins get good, I think of all those people sitting there in the brand new Twins stadium, eating their nachos and everything else, and I turn to my gardening, and it's a very good feeling. Next slide, please. This is the emblem of the organic gardening movement that I like to call the Great God Good Green Warrior. It's actually the offspring of the Jolly Green Giant and Sprout, you know, so if you're ever driving down, like, you know, I-169 or whatever through Leesburg, Minnesota, and, you know, you see that billboard of the ho-ho-ho Green Giant, you know, everything else. What you don't see is just behind that rise, that's where this guy lives. Try to remember for everybody to eat their veggies. Next slide, please. We often ask how Hugh Jackman got that wonderful singing voice that he has shown us so much in The Boy of Oz and even like this Blob, where I heard they had to do everything in one take. Now, this is a little known fact that you might want to remember for your child. Good singing does not just come from great parenting and great genes and everything else, it also comes from your organic garden. So, little known fact, Hugh Jackman actually has one on the roof of this brownstone in Greenwich Village where he lives with his wife and his kid. True story. Next slide, please. Well, obviously, what we mean by a hot potato is you should eat a fucking hot potato, you know? We don't want to go for, like, the prepackaged or right-up fries, you know? When I'm standing in the grocery store, I see the tater tots, I see the steak fries, I see the curly fries. But, dude, russets, fingerlings, little baby reds, Yukon Golds, that is the hot potato that you should always be thinking of when you think about organic farming. Next slide, please. Africa has a little bit of a problem with organic gardening. Mainly, you know, as I was alluding to at the beginning with the quinoa and thinking about yourself as, you know, over-entitled first world problems, we forget about the lions. You know, that whole continent of the Serengeti and everything else. When, you know, the rainfall and everything else just doesn't add up to good organic gardening. This is what happens, right? This is what happens when they are trying to protect their crops. And it is a metaphor, but it's not just a metaphor. It is completely blatant. Next slide, please. So heart disease is a very serious problem, you know, affecting all those people who are eating the nachos at the Twins game, you know, those who are not listening to the Great Green Warrior and everything else. Chinchillas, they get that soft, thick fur, and they kind of look like bunnies, you know what I mean? But they're like so much thicker and softer from eating all of those carrots and all the things that you throw in their cages. Totally awesome. Ted Nugent likes to kill chinchillas with his guns, right? Which is why he is you know, connected very well with the heart disease here, because he is a very sad GOP Monsanto kind of loving kind of guy and does not do organic gardening. Next slide, please. picture of my grandfather. He grew up in a farm in South Dakota, right outside Del Rapids, a little bit out of the way of Sioux Falls. I know, you don't think there's anything around Sioux Falls because you don't think that Sioux Falls is anything. It's true, though. There are things, like my grandfather. Back about 1920, you know, his family had a decision to make. Now, do we go with the gardening or should we keep on the livestock trail, right? Well, they looked at their little son Raymond and decided, so not safe. We got to go with the gardening. So, you know, I would definitely recommend for your future child to pick that route as well. Next slide, please. Neil Patrick Harris. I'm totally guessing he's a vegetarian and loved his organic garden. Minotaur totally ate the shit or tried to out of Daedalus and Icarus. Who are we going to root for? I mean, really. Neil Patrick Harris, who looks fabulous as Peter Pan. I don't know if you guys have seen that picture of his cute little family and his twins from Halloween a couple years ago. Totally awesome. Organic farming, Neil Patrick Harris, all the way. Next slide, please.
Oh, gosh.
Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't know any more of a blatant illustration of what will happen to you if you do not go down the organic gardening route. Next slide, please. This is what happens when you eat too much genetically modified food. Not only do you start seeing unicorns, you start seeing the things at the end of the rainbow, and you too will finally convince yourself that you have a girlfriend in Canada, which is a really great excuse if you're actually gay but don't want to tell anybody. You know, if you're a guy, you're just like, oh yeah, my girlfriend lives in Canada, that's awesome. But if you do not eat enough organic food, you will totally start to believe all three of those things. Next slide, please. You know, we hear about Seven Sigma all the time in the business world, I know. It's really one of those corporate speaks out there with put it on the table or put it in the parking lot or let's have a meeting about a meeting and all that other stuff, right? With organic gardening, you don't need that. You just hold the ground, put the seeds and water it and watch the magic happen. So really, think about these awesome little guys. The next time you hear Seven Sigma, go, no, I don't want that. Next slide, please. So in summary, just as we look at our food and we are a product of what we eat, we look at this man growing out of the earth and go, that's what we want to be too. So remember, keep your organic garden flowing, just like Neil Patrick Harris, not like the people at the Twins games with those nachos who are destined for gastric bypass and all of that stuff. Keep that green goblin warrior with you at all times. Organic gardening, my friends. Woo!